So very good morning and welcome along to another of our Business Spotlight interviews. My name's Ron Maycock. I'm the owner of Action Coach Castleford and also of Business Performance UK. And I'm delighted this morning to be joined by Chris Duckworth. Very good morning to you, Chris.
Good morning.
So Chris is the Managing Director of SIP Build or SIP Build UK, which you can see behind. There is also some other brands, but we're mainly focusing on that. We'll be hearing a lot more from Chris in a few moments. Before we do that, though, I just really wanted to explain what the purpose of these interviews are. We're surrounded by some amazing businesses in our region. They've each got their own story to tell. They're each on their own journeys. And this is a way of showcasing their achievements and ultimately maximizing their exposure into the market, all in the name of abundance. The more people know about the businesses in our area, the better. And it's for the benefit of businesses across the UK and also wider. So without further ado, Chris, tell me a bit more about SIP Build UK.
Morning, thanks, Ron. SIP Build UK, we're 11 years old this year. We started out in the difficult recession. We do SIP panels, which are structurally insulated panels, which are their premium system. They're the BMW of building systems, if you like. They're off-site, they're factory engineered, so they're all precise, and they're incredibly thermally efficient. So in this day and age where electricity and energy bills are going through the roof, there's a real push towards energy efficient buildings, so much so that the government has changed the latest regulations to make it more difficult to build. We're really well placed with a super product offering. We've recently swapped our supply. We've moved to a business called Hemsec based in the Northwest. We've been doing SIP panels for many, many years. They're looking to become a B Corp organisation, and the fit between the two is fantastic. So we're very transparent, and we're wanting to offer the customer a service that's clear, transparent, and also looking to offer them a solution rather than just one particular product like many of our competitors do. A more consultative approach, if you like.
So the actual panels, are they standard size, or do these come in very much bespoke? If they're going to a factory, do you have free reign, if you like, in terms of saying this is the size of panels that's going to be most effective for this particular build or particular design?
So the process works on a number of thicknesses of size. So we're now with a supplier who can do everything from 75 mil in thickness through to 225 mil. The panel size is typically 1.2 meters wide by 4.8 meters long, or 6 meters long, or 7.5 meters long. So they're massive panels. So they will come into our factory. We'll use some 3D modeling software to bed the panels into a cutting pattern, and then we'll cut the panels in our factory bespoke to suit every single job. No job is ever the same. The mix of panels is never the same. We're currently working very well with a 175 mil panel for the walls and a 225 for the roof. That seems to be the latest favourite option, which meets building regs straight off the shelf. We're quite lucky with that because there's not many of our competitors have that range of panel size. Certainly the main player in the marketplace is limited to 2 panels, so it gives us a really good advantage with that one. Putting in the factory is all done through QC systems, through panel saws and rebating. And it's a noisy business, should we say, but it's best done certainly in the factory where we've got lots of extraction to keep the waste down to a minimum.
And that's actually done in your own factory then. So you're getting the raw material from the new supplier, and then you're cutting it down actually in your own site to fit the purpose. Is that right?
Yeah, we set the factory up about 7 years ago, so we've plenty of experience with doing it now. It's not the biggest factory in the world, but it's very productive. We bring the raw panels, as we call them, in. We cut them down to size, and then we rebate them on a spindle molder with a pineapple cutter. It does provide barrier to entry into the marketplace because it's not the kind of equipment that you can just set up in a garage. Unlike timber frame, where all you need is a handsaw, a hammer, and a packet of nails, and you could almost start making timber frames. The equipment required, whilst it's not particularly clever, but there's an investment required to set your own factory up to cut your own SIP panels.
So within the market then, is that the normal model, or does that make you slightly unique? Are there plenty of businesses that fit SIP panels but are reliant on them coming in a standard size so they can't actually shape them to purpose?
No, it's a bit of a mix, to be fair. There are a core number of us who have our own factory and turn out bespoke buildings through using somebody else's core panel. There's very few people who actually manufacture their own polyurethane-based SIP panel and cut it all themselves, simply because there's two parts to the business, really. There's a number of major insulation suppliers who manufacture these products in the raw state. So essentially they're providing a blank panel or an insulation panel, if you like. And then it's up to the likes of ourselves as specialist manufacturers and subcontractors who then manufacture and create the bespoke buildings. And then I guess layer down from that, you've got a number of people who brass plate, if you like, who will come to the likes of ourselves or other people and ask us to cut projects for them so they can install them on site. It's a way into the market. The problem with that is you've no control over your quality. So if somebody issues you with a kit and you erect the kit, if there's a problem with it, who do you go to? Because I can guarantee that the fitters on site will blame the kit and the kit manufacturer will blame the fitters on site, and you as a customer in the middle are stuck with nowhere to go because you haven't got the expertise. So it's very often better to go to a specialist manufacturer and installer like ourselves, who takes care of that entire process from design through to completion of install. It's only the superstructure we're doing. We're not fitting the windows, we're not putting the roof on, we're not doing the heating inside. That still goes traditional, but what we are doing is saving weeks and weeks and weeks on site by producing this product in a factory, which is bespoke, purpose cut, and should in theory go perfectly every time.
And
I say in theory.
In theory, yeah. So in terms of the panels themselves, what do they fit onto? They're clearly not freestanding. So are these going onto a timber or a metal frame, or how does the system actually work?
So the panels are structural, so they carry a lot of the support of the walls themselves, but they sit onto a blockwork upstand typically. So if you're building your own home or you're a school or whatever the foundation is, you typically have a beam and block floor. It could be a concrete raft, whatever the foundation's deemed to be by your engineer. We'll come along, we ask you for an upstand to take us up to ground floor level. It's timber, we don't want to put it below that because it gets wet. Mm-hmm. If it's below that, so we start at ground floor level, we'll put it onto what we call a sole plate. So it's a timber, and there's a slave plate that sits on top of that, which accepts the rebated panel. The panel sits onto the slave and sole plate, and then we work the building round. So in a 10 meter wall, you're likely to have 8 panels because they're 1.2 meters wide. Where the windows are and the doors are, we design the openings accordingly. And obviously, with it being a structural system, we've got to get the loadings from the floors and the roof through the system. Sometimes they'll be done through the panel itself. Sometimes they might be done through timber structural joists. If you've got a lot of glazing on a project, which has been the modern trend with big bifold doors or galleried windows, you might find that you've got a small steel frame that's in the building line. Again, we take care of all of that. So we end up giving you a structure. And in theory, everything that we do, you don't see when the building's finished.
Right. Okay. So is it all external walls, or do you do internal load-bearing walls as well? I suppose as long as it's load-bearing, are you doing internal walls?
We've got a philosophy with this, is that if we're going to give you a superstructure, so the external equivalent of the blockwork wall, but we're replacing it with an insulated system. If we're going to do that and we're going to give you the floors and we're going to give you the roof, then why wouldn't we give you all the internal walls? Mm-hmm. We have a factory that's quality controlled and set up and precisely engineered. So why wouldn't we deliver that to you every time instead of letting you join your own site, hack it together himself because he thinks he knows best and he can save you a few quid? Well, it's not what you're paying for. Mm-hmm. You're paying for a system to be delivered. We've got competitors who won't give you the full system because they either don't want to do that or don't see the need to do that. Conversely, I don't see the need, how you can't do that. If you're buying a superstructure off me, you're getting everything. I'm giving you the full package. So there's no argument, there's no ifs, buts, maybes. We've come along and we find that it's not a wall that we've built, well, that's a really, we've built the wall because it's the whole system. So there's no argument. And then it's been put in right because it's to our drawings. So it gives you, for us, it gives a better customer understanding and it gives a better customer interface. There's no distinctive, the lines are clearer, and I'm a great one for having clean lines.
And are you taking the design right the way through to where the cabling will go and where the sort of electrical points and things like that, or do you leave that to a sort of first and second fix?
No, that's a first and second fix. But typically, because of the way the system works, you've got an OSB grade 3 board on the inside face of all the external walls, which is fantastic for tacking your pipe work or your cabling to. It also means that the sparky or the plumber can give a better finish as long as he carries his level around with him. But because you're fixing to that, you get a much cleaner detail. We typically use metal open web floor joists, so you can get your ducting through. It's a premium system. There are cheaper ways to build. There are cheaper ways to do floors. I'm not particularly interested in that because I want to deliver a high quality, high performance building for the customer.
So in terms of the costing of the system, where does it fit and what's the clawback in terms of energy efficiency against initial outlay? What's the benefit and how long does the consumer have to wait till they actually start realizing that benefit?
Okay, so that's a bit of a piece of string kind of question. Every project's different, but I'll give you an analogy. Talk about cars. If you're building traditionally, I would, and this is no slur on the cars that I'm going to use, by the way, but this is purely for representative purposes. A Dacia Duster would be a traditional construction. It's functional, it gets you from A to B, but it's not the greatest looking of cars and it's not the greatest technologically advanced car, but it does the job. Timber frames, I would class as a decent mid-range Ford Focus. The SIP product is a 5 Series BMW. It's all singing, all dancing. It's got all the technology and it's a fantastic drive. Now, obviously, those three cars cost different amounts. But what you will get on the back of it is your 5 Series BMW will have much better resale value than that's your Duster. With the change in the building regulations recently, it's been getting more and more difficult for the Duster, if you like, or the traditional construction to meet the thermal performance, which means you're getting walls building up from 350 mil, 400 mil, 500 mil deep just to meet the thermal performance. We can do that with something less than 250 millimeters. So we're saving you half the space. Certainly, we do a lot of work in the south of England where when you're talking £1,000 a square foot selling price, all that space that we're gaining the client is valuable selling price. To answer your question about the energy efficiency, we've recently finished a project down in Derbyshire, which has been built to Passive House. It was on Grand Designs. The client posts regularly about the performance of the building. He had snow on the ground the other week and he hadn't turned the heating on. It was 22 degrees inside the building. So I don't care who you are, be it Putin or otherwise, trying to cut gas off. If there's no requirement for heat because your building's that well insulated, it immediately starts paying back at huge levels. We've done quite a lot of work with social housing providers in the past, looking to try and bring people out of fuel poverty. This was a number of years ago, before poverty or fuel was massive. I mean, at the moment, it's doubled, tripled in price. And we're talking 5 years ago when we were working on these projects, and the fuel poverty then was an issue. It can only have got worse. So if we can build these projects, these houses for people where they're energy efficient and keep money in their pocket, they're more likely to pay the rent and stay in the house, so you get a better turnover. So it's not just about self-builders doing grand design houses. Social housing can look at this model and go, if we build a better project, a better building, whilst there's a bit of money up front, we'll have more regular tenants who are paying the bills on time, they're happier and have an opportunity to get themselves out of fuel poverty. It's a win on all counts.
Absolutely. And it leads me on, I guess, in terms of what that ideal client actually looks like. You said that you've got a mix from self-build and higher end projects, but you're also doing the mass market, the affordable housing. You're doing right across the spectrum. So what constitutes an ideal client for you in terms of volume, in terms of demand, I guess in terms of how they act as a customer as well? But
well, an ideal client for us is somebody that pays the bills. Joking aside, we know our market inside out. We do an awful lot of self-build, grand design style homes, but it doesn't have to be a grand design house. It can be a 3-bedroom small extension squeezed onto a garden. We start with that. We do an awful lot of self-build work. We take on small developers so we can guide them through the process. But we also work with tier 1 contractors. We recently finished University St John Creative Centre with Keir in York. I mean, that's an unbelievably great looking building. It's a creative centre in York, difficult access, big steel building wrapped in SIPs. So we've got both extremes. We can work with the small self builders. Extensions is something that we steered clear of historically because they haven't been cost effective. People generally wanting an extension are looking for a cost-effective solution. The problem they've got now is with the building regs having changed and got much more stringent, the only way to keep the internal space is to use a premium system from an insulation point of view. So it's really going to make SIPs a go-to for the self-building or the small builder doing extensions, which is a market that we've generally steered clear from. So that would open up. So self-built houses, extensions will become part of the future. And tier 1, I mean, we did 3 schools down in the south of England last year. It's a wide variety. SIP can be used anywhere.
And there's clearly changes in terms of building regs and also global economic factors that have affected the supply chain, energy prices, as we were sort of saying. So there's a lot pushing people in terms of using SIPs or other highly insulated products. Do you see this as being in time maybe supported by the government in terms of certain grants that will be available to implement the build in your systems rather than build it traditionally, stick in a load of insulation afterwards as an afterthought?
Support from the government is an interesting question, simply because it's already there in 2 forms. Homes England, for example, will lend money to small developers and give them preferential terms if they're using an off-site or a modern method of construction, which SIPs is. But they've got to tick several boxes with that, so they're already trying to push down that line. What they've found, though, is that the major developers, the big house builders, have worked out to the penny what a house costs for them to build, and therefore have no interest in going down a modern method per se, because they've got the land bank, etc. So in order to encourage them to join the party, they've decided to spin it on its head and essentially change the building regs and the SAP and the way the SAP assessments are calculated to make it more difficult to achieve SAP. So that the SAP calculation will take the thermal performance of the building, the windows, the heating systems, etc., and churn out a number at the end. We haven't had any changes for 12 years, so people have got used to using standard values and being able to fudge a system through or cheat it, if you like. I'm not suggesting they're deliberately cheated, but if there's a system to be played, you play it. But the government have changed that recently, well, last year, to be fair, June last year. And we're really now starting to see the impact. It's becoming much, much more difficult, and only companies that have got a good technical backup have got the information required for the SAP assessors to help you get it passed. And we found this a real benefit with moving to a 225 roof panel, which will give you a pass out of the bag. But you've got to have the calculations to back it up, which we have, luckily. Second part with that is by the government making these changes, they're forcing an industry into looking at how it works. Traditional construction at this moment in time has become the bad guy because it doesn't work from an insulation point of view. But go back 5 years ago when Grenfell kicked in, traditional construction was the good guy because it didn't burn, it was non-combustible. So we've seen lots of changes through the marketplace, and these will continue. I think traditional will come up with a method, an aerated block or some form of insulated block to try and compete. But it's very telling that the major house builders have all gone and bought themselves timber frame factories, knowing that this is a method that they're going to have to build in to achieve the building rates. I mean, it also captures carbon, which is fantastic.
I was going to say on the carbon side of things, what's the carbon footprint in terms of making it? It's the age-old adage, I guess, in terms of electric cars and going, oh right, they're a lot cleaner, but the actual energy, unless they're coming from solar, in terms of generating, the actual energy is produced in a carbon emitting way. The lithium batteries have, well, no one knows how they're going to be recycled down the line and how long they're going to go. And there's all these different calculations of when actually something becomes carbon neutral or carbon negative at that point. So what in terms of your construction process, then what's the footprint looking like? Is it better than other methods?
Yeah,
About the same, or
no, our method of construction from a carbon footprint point of view is massive. It's fantastic. We use timber. The OSB board that's used on the SIP panel is from harvested, forested, managed forests. It's wood chippings essentially, which is produced in factories. One in Stirling, one in Wrexham, several on the continent. And it's waste product that's turned into a great product that's structurally sound for use. The timbers that are used all come from PEFC managed forests. So we've got this carbon neutral element. The argument would be is the polyurethane core of the insulated panel. It comes as an oil derivative. Unfortunately, unless you're using sheep's wool, there is no insulation out there. It's not any highly dependent on energy for production or completely neutral. I guess you could look at recycled newspapers, what that's blown into, but the processing cost is massive. Concrete, once it's built, you get a thermal mass from it, but the energy involved in producing concrete is horrific. The thing with the timber building, be it a SIP or a timber frame, is when you finish with that building, it can be recycled. Blocks can't be recycled; they generally end up in hardcore in the road. So we've got a product which will carbon capture as we go on. It's thermally efficient, sustainable, and very fast to build. It's a no-brainer. There's no way that if we manage it correctly, timber isn't the future of building. It's on the continent. It is in Scotland. We've been building with timber for thousands of years.
And I guess recent events have pushed a lot of awareness towards your products. So there's a bright future in terms of, as you say, traditional methods may come up with a way to compete and to, create a different insulated product with the same sort of processes. But right here, right now, this looks like it's the best option. So very positive future for the industry ahead. What's the biggest challenges that you're facing, though, despite everything pushing you towards a brighter future and growth moving forward?
Labour shortages, probably. We try and automate as much as we possibly can in the factory, but unless you're spending millions and millions of pounds putting robotic systems in, you're still going to need people on the ground. And fitting the buildings on the site requires labour. So labour shortages will kick in there. What we do find, though, is because we sit in the area that looks at smaller sites, we're not looking at the 1,000-unit sites. We're not looking at the buy-to-rent marketplace, which is very much going down the modular route, so therefore being produced in a factory. Not every site has that. When you look at the London boroughs, for example, they've all got small pockets of land which aren't suitable for modular housing, but they do require an energy-efficient, fast build, something like a SIP or a timber frame that can be done, and therefore every job's bespoke. So that gives us a huge area to look at and a massive area for growth. But it's also tied back to the labour. If we don't bring enough apprentices through, the industry in the next 10 to 15 years will be completely and utterly knackered.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing that with brickworkers now, I mean, I have heard stories and seen stories of bricklayers being paid £2,000, £2,500 a week in the south of England. That's as much as a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
or more. It's a frightening number.
So the skill shortage is in the physical build, not the factory build that you're experiencing. How are you finding sort of other skill shortages on the engineering side? Is that as no worse than it's been for a number of years, or?
I go through peaks and troughs.
Mm-hmm.
People still want to be engineers, which is fortunate. Obviously, with more timber frame and factories having been set up, the capacity and the number of designers has increased, and it's a relatively easy thing to train if somebody wants to do it. Because most of us have got systems in place, and we use software that is akin to the systems. So once you start being shown how to do it, the system does a lot of the work for you, which is, impressive. However, engineering, every single site's different, so it's got to be engineered. So yeah, if we don't get enough engineers through, that will hold that one up. We haven't seen the issues that some industries have with losing the Eastern European workers who've probably gone home for COVID. That was inevitable at some point. As other countries have improved and got better across the continent, there's no reason for them to stay in the UK. So whatever thoughts on that one, we're going to have another migrant influx now, when the government eventually pulls its finger out, through Ukrainians and Syrians, and Kurdistan and whatever. Let's give them some passports and let's get them working. We've come to this country for a better life. Let's help them get a better life.
No, absolutely. And as a final question from my side, so what's next for SIP Build UK? What's the future holding, and what direction are you heading in?
Future for SIP Build UK is the group as well. So the SB UK group, which features frame build, pad build, and met build. So we've got a number of systems, so we can offer a consultative approach. Very easy for me to say. We're looking for a period of stability. We've had some ups and downs through crises of our own and through ones that we haven't been able to avoid, COVID being one of them, Brexit being another. But we've had some significant changes within the business. We've developed systems and transparency. So we're really well set to move forward and deliver a high quality product for a bigger customer base. So we're looking for some, say, years of stability and growth. I think everybody's looking for that, but just some stability would be nice. And then we can move from there. We've got a good team, managing themselves and giving me a little bit more time on a daily basis, not to have to work in the business quite as much as I used to.
That's what we all strive for. If the business can work and function without necessarily everything going through a hub and spoke of one particular person, that's always a good thing. It means that if you do fall foul of something like COVID, as a little bit of an in-joke there, we did obviously rearrange this. Chris unfortunately did have a little bout again, third time I think, was it? Third or fourth, or something like that. So things do happen, and as we say, sometimes there's macroeconomic factors that change things, and best laid plans go straight out the window. So having a business that can operate without total dependence is always a great thing, and over the next few years, if you can build that into the business, you're going to be in a very good position to then have dynamic growth moving forward as the systems become more and more popular and possibly enforced by different regulations and saying you've got to use them, not just it's a choice. So it's certainly looking bright for the future. So it's bringing us towards the end of the interview. Just as a final thing, is there anything that we've not covered today, Chris, that you'd like to put out there for people listening?
Not particularly. I think we've covered it quite well. We're a progressive, forward-thinking, transparent business now. We've changed over the years. Having had 11 years of this, I never expected to be where we are now. and we're really looking forward to the new partnership with HEMSEC that we've got. So, it's bring on the future.
Well, it brought a smile to your face thinking about it. So it's clearly exciting, and it's moving very much in the right direction. So, well, that does bring us to the end of the interview. So thanks again to Chris for joining us and sharing the journey of SIP Build UK. Been very insightful, and hopefully you've enjoyed it as well from your side. Yeah, fantastic. Also, big thank you to everyone who's been watching this. If you want to record your own interview, if you want to showcase your own business, just like Chris has done today, then just simply get in touch. We do post these out onto social media, different sort of areas, so you'll be able to find the contact details, but just look us up and get in touch. We can record your own marketing or awareness-based interview so that you can use that with your own business. So thanks again to Chris, and thank you for everyone who's been watching. This has been another of our Business Spotlight interviews. We'll see you soon. Take care.